Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Pedro Arruza, welcome to the Center of the Universe. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Now, you and I just met today. I don't know you. Where would you say you're from?
That is a great question, and that's when recruits come in and the parents ask me that, I've been all over the place. I've actually been here in Ashland longer than I've been any other place. So I was born in Spain, moved to England for 2 years when I was 4 years old, moved to Mexico after that. When I was 7 years old, my dad passed away, and so we moved to Miami, Florida. I moved in with an uncle in Miami, Florida. It was my mother and myself and three brothers, so I was the oldest of four boys. Another brother came along a little bit later, so I was the oldest of five boys. So grew up in Miami, and spent most of my childhood there, second grade until the eighth grade, and in the eighth grade we moved to a town west of West Palm Beach, Loxahatchee, and went to high school in West Palm Beach. Left West Palm Beach and went to Wheaton College, where I went to school and played football for 4 years. And then we moved down to Nashville, Tennessee area. I coached at Battleground Academy for a couple of years. I was a football coach, wrestling coach, and a baseball coach. Taught English. And then I left there, went to Butler University in Indianapolis, and got my master's degree there in English and also coached. And then I went to Washington University in St. Louis for 5 years, and then got hired here in 2004 when I was 30 years old. So
Head coaching gig.
Yes.
At 30.
Yep.
What was it about you that attracted Randolph-Macon to offer you a head coaching job?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It was really interesting because I think that they brought three guys in, and in retrospect, I was probably the least qualified of the three. And there's a lot of stories that go into this, right? But I think one of the candidates was an internal candidate. He was their offensive coordinator. And I think the players really wanted him to be the head coach. The other candidate was somebody that had deep ties to Richmond. Dad had been a high school coach in the area. He had been the offensive coordinator at West Point. He had been a Division II head coach. In fact, I had listened to him speak at a clinic in Missouri when I was the defensive coordinator at Washington University. And he had actually been at the University of Richmond, so had a lot of roots here in Richmond, and was really way more qualified than I was. And I came in, and I'm really not sure what happened. But
you knocked their socks off. That's what happened.
I don't know. Something must have happened. Maybe those guys turned it down. I don't know the whole story behind it, but it was interesting because I didn't know anybody out here when I interviewed. And in fact, when I set my resume, my wife and I had looked at different, head coaching opportunities. And one of the things that we had decided is we're not just going to go anywhere. If we're going to go somewhere, it's got to be somewhere where we can be for at least 5, 6, 7 years. And so when we looked at, we had looked at several other jobs, and most of them we looked at and said, this is not the sort of place where we're going to be for longer than a year or two. And I didn't want to move my family around that much. As a coach, you move around quite a bit. And so, when I saw this opening, I looked at the map and looked at the town of Ashland, and I thought, that might be a decent spot. I knew the conference was a good conference. I knew Randolph-Macon had a good tradition. I didn't know what kind of a tradition it had in great depth, because at that point the internet, while it was a thing, didn't have nearly the information that it has right now. So I knew a little bit about the college. I knew it was a good school academically. I knew they had a decent tradition that was based on some of the people that I talked to about Randolph-Macon. But it looked like a place that, at least intrigued me. And so I came out here for the interview, and I remember sitting in the dean's office, and he said, why do you want this job? And I said, well, I don't know that I do. I said, that's what I'm here to find out.
Yeah, I'm interviewing you.
Well, I just wanted to see if it was going to be a good fit, and I think that at that point they needed somebody to come in and shake things up a little bit, and I think they wanted somebody who was going to be a disciplinarian. And it was interesting when I came out here for the interview. I had interviewed done a mock interview with our athletic director at Washington University, a guy by the name of John Shale. And so I went in there and, we did this mock interview, and he looked at me and he said, if you answer these questions like that when you go out there, they're not going to hire you. And I said, well, this is who I am. I said, I have to be who I am. And so I came in, and that's how it kind of unfolded.
So think back to that interview, right? So did they ask you a question around what's your 60-day plan, your 90-day plan when you come in? And if they didn't, or if they did, what as a football coach is a first 90 days look like with you as the head coach?
I don't know that they asked me as much about a 90-day plan, but I had been pretty thorough in my preparation for the interview. I had a tremendous mentor at Wheaton College with J.R. Bishop, and he had been my head coach at Wheaton, and had another really great mentor in Mike Swider, who was the defensive coordinator and the guy that took over for Coach Bishop when Coach Bishop retired my senior year. And, really good friends with another guy named Chris Creighton, who is the head coach at Eastern Michigan now, and we're still great friends. And, he had built programs at a lot of different places. He had been at the NAIA level at Ottawa University in Kansas, and then got the job at Wabash in Indiana. That was a Division III job, and did a great job there. And he got hired at Drake in Iowa. Now he's at Eastern Michigan. But he and I talked extensively about the interview process, and I think I was very, very prepared, from the standpoint that, I had some great mentors that were able to sit me down and say, okay, here, what's the plan for recruiting? What's the plan for dealing with alumni? What's the plan, for dealing with discipline? And so as far as a 60-day plan, I don't know that I had a 60-day plan, but I definitely had thought through a lot of different things. And I think the most important thing was, when I talked to Coach Swider about the interview, he said, just be yourself, And I remember calling him from the airport, and I said, this was after the interview. I mean, it was a long interview. I got here on a Wednesday night, interviewed all day Thursday, and interviewed, most of the day on Friday before I went home to St. Louis. And I remember calling Coach Swider because he was a guy that was, and still is pretty instrumental in my life. And I said, I don't know how the interview went, but I feel really good about the fact that, I laid it out there. This is who I am, and this is how I'm going to coach, and this is how we would run the program. And so that part I felt really good about. And a week later, they called me and offered me the job. But literally, when I sent my resume out here, I did not know anybody.
Had you ever been to Virginia?
I don't think I had ever been to Virginia.
Wow.
No.
That's crazy, right?
It is. In fact, the closest thing I came to a contact out here, there was a guy named Bill McGregor who was the head coach at DeMatha. And we subscribed at Washington University to his recruiting service. It was called the MARS, the Mid-Atlantic Report. And so I recruited Maryland, I recruited Virginia, and, Washington University, our average SAT on the football team was like a 1420.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a really good school.
It's a great school academically. So the last couple of years that I was there, I mean, we may have had like 2 or 3 kids in both Virginia and Maryland that we were recruiting, just period, from those 2 states. But Bill was a guy that I had developed a relationship with, and he was one of the first people that I called when I found out that Randolph-Macon was interested. And I asked Bill, and he said, well, I think it's got a chance to be a really good job, and I think it's in a really good area, and you can win there.
Why coaching?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the impact that different coaches that I've had in my life, made on me. I didn't tell you this before, but the reason that we moved to Miami when I was 7 is my dad killed himself, so moved in with an uncle that I had a good relationship with, but not a very deep relationship with. And so I went to school and learned how to speak English in the 2nd grade. And the coaches that I had both in the elementary school and in the middle school, and especially in high school and in college, just had an enormous impact on my life. And I thought a lot about going to law school. That's what my mother wanted me to do. And I was a good student, and so I would go home over breaks, and my mom would say, you need to go to law school. And, it sounded good, right? People
Sure.
ask you, what are you going to do with your college degree? I'm going to go to law school. But I knew deep in my heart that I wanted to coach and that I wanted to make an impact on kids. And, I didn't want to get to the end of my life and say, what have I done? I've made a lot of money, or I've been a great attorney. How can I make the biggest difference and the biggest impact in this world? And I thought coaching was the way to do that.
Were you a de facto dad to your 4 brothers?
I would say so, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Yeah. Why football?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, for me, it was something that I was really drawn to at an early age. I always wanted to play football. I was always really intrigued. When I watched TV and, watched the college games and watched the NFL games. And it wasn't until the 7th grade that my mother, allowed me to play. I begged her for years to let me play, and finally in the 7th grade she relented. And
what changed for Mom?
I think I was just very persistent. I was really persistent, and I said I really want to play football, and that's something that I have a passion for. And I mean, it was just something that I fell in love with right away. I had an unbelievable coach my 7th grade year. It was one of the hardest experiences ever in terms of what this guy demanded and just how demanding he was and what he expected out of us. But it was life-changing, and it happened at a very, critical time in my life, time where, I was struggling a little bit with the fact that my dad wasn't there, and, my mom was struggling with some things as well. And, alcohol was a part of that, drugs were a part of that. And so I really just latched onto this guy. And, I remember this guy pulling me aside after one practice, and he said, "Man, I think that, you're a really smart kid, and you're really tough." He said, I think you can go play in the Ivy League someday, and so he kind of planted that vision in my mind. And, that was really the first coach that I had, other than some guys in the elementary school that were really good guys that I felt like I could relate to and talk to, but just the first guy that I think planted a vision and just really had an impact. I've never gone back to find Coach LeMay. I moved from Miami. And, I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know if he's still, alive. But I've thought about it many times. I mean, I've got a big, a frame picture on my desk, and it's an article from that season. We won the championship, the Miami City Championship, and it was a travel team. And, we started out, I think, with 62 players and ended up with 22 at the end of the year. And that year was just a critical year. I mean, it just football bug bit me, and I loved it. I mean, it was just changed my life.
How amazing is that you pestered your mom to play? She finally lets you in 7th grade, and something that impactful to your life happens when you first start playing football. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, people ask me, what are the things that have impacted you the most, right? Because obviously, had a bit of a tough go at it with, my family situation and some of the things that happened. 2 things that have impacted me the most. One is my experience with football. Okay, changed my life. I mean, absolutely changed my life, and then my faith. Those are the 2 things that absolutely changed the trajectory of everything for me.
Yeah, football. Not every kid wants to play football. It's a tough sport.
It's tough.
What position did you play?
I was well, interestingly enough, my first year, I was the minority on the team. And I joke around with my coaches sometimes. I said, hey, it was, me and 2 other white kids, right? Except the 3 white kids were Julio, Roman, and Pedro, right? And, Coach LeMay thought I was not that fast. And so I was a nose guard. I wore number 66, and I was a guard. So I played left guard and nose guard. We played a 50 defense, so I always lined up over an odd front over the center. And then the next year, when I played middle school football, I moved to tailback, became a running back, and played linebacker in high school, played safety. But in college, I was a running back.
Wow. Did you start for a couple of years?
In college?
Yeah. I'm guessing you started in high school since you played in college.
I did. Yeah, I started all 4 years at Wheaton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you were a baller.
I don't know about that, but
Did you have a 1,000-yard season?
I did.
Wow. Do you have a Wikipedia page that I don't know about?
I don't think they did a Wikipedia page on me. I don't think I'm that esteemed.
So to get 1,000 yards, you have to be tough. You have to grind.
No doubt.
And you have to
No
have
doubt.
some physical skill, right?
Yeah.
What was your best skill?
I think I was just a grinder. I mean, I think I worked really, really hard, and I was very determined, and I just prided myself on working really, really hard and just outworking everybody.
Who do you compare your running back? Who do you compare your style to? Somebody that our listeners or we would know. Is like a Christian McCaffrey type? Or are we talking Earl Campbell, where you're running people over?
Yeah, Larry Zonka. Does anybody
Larry
remember
Zonka?
Larry
Oh,
Zonka?
I love Larry Zonka.
Yeah, old Dolphins running back, fullback.
Yeah. When my older cousins would run over me in backyard football, they would say
Yeah, with Larry
Zonka.
Zonka,
They
yeah.
would refer to Larry Zonka. Yeah.
That's good.
I grew up a Dolphins fan, so I loved Larry Zonka and
Mercury Morris.
Mercury Morris and
Thunder
Don Shula, Dan Marino. All those different guys.
Yeah. Dolphins were good back then. The Dolphins were good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Chargers fan, so we met a few times in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, I think you guys should have won way more than you have, and we should have won way more than we have.
Yeah.
Stuff in those Marino teams, how
Yeah.
they didn't go further. It's just, I know defense, a big part of that, but
Yeah, there's
Don
no
Shula.
doubt. University of Miami was really good when
Oh,
I was
yeah.
growing up. I used to go to the Orange Bowl a lot to watch the
The U.
U. That's right. That was my team growing up.
In the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
So would they win 4 or 5 then in the 80s?
I think Jimmy Johnson won one. Dennis Erickson won a couple.
And
And
Schnellenberger.
Schnellenberger won one. He was the guy that got it going.
Yeah, he
Schnellenberger
did.
was the guy
He
that got
did.
it going.
Oh,
That was a unique team. Those teams were very
Yeah,
unique.
there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Unique in a lot of off the field ways
a
too.
lot
I
of good
imagine.
and bad ways.
No doubt.
Oh man,
Studs though.
I did not see you telling me you were a running back. I don't know why. I thought you were going to say like strong safety, something like that.
Running back.
You enjoyed offense more than defense?
I just think that when I got to college, I had to pick one or the other, and I was probably a better running back than I was a defensive player.
But Zonka ran through people,
He did.
and like I'm not going to. You can share how tall you are if you want, but you're not Larry Zonka's size.
No. 5'5", 5'6" on a good day.
Yeah, and you're running through guys.
Yeah, you could say that.
Was it because you got lower than them? I'm not trying to be funny when I say that.
No. I mean, yeah. I think when you're this short, that's what you got to do.
That's crazy to start at 4 years.
Were you fast? Were you running the 40?
It was pretty fast. I mean, I think that consistently a 4.6.
Oh, yeah.
And that's legitimately a 4.6. Not a lot of guys claim that they're running 4.6s and 4.5s, but
That's impressive.
They're just taking 0.3 of a second off just because they can.
I think there's a lot of fudging that goes on with those numbers. Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, I told everybody I ran a 4.53, and I did a couple times. How legitimate that time was, who knows?
Well, how do you time somebody in the 40, right? Because you're timing kids all the time, right?
We don't do as much timing, and we have a system a free lap system that we use to time kids. So we don't do as many 40s as we do like flying 10s and 10-yard dashes.
Yeah, because there's a lot of 10-yard sprints on the football field. Yeah. Not a lot of 40-yard dashes.
Not as much. I mean, that's kind of the gold standard, but I think it's just a metric that they've used for a lot of years, and so I think that's what they tend to use.
Yeah. So you were an assistant coach for a lot of your career before you came to Randolph-Macon, and you had done a little head coaching at the high school level.
I was an assistant at the high school.
So your first head coaching gig, you were 30 years old.
Yes.
And got the job at Randolph-Macon.
Yes.
What did you love about being an assistant coach, and what did you love about being a head coach? And then what did you dislike about both?
Yeah, I think that, I think as an assistant coach, you're shielded a little bit from some of the problems that a head coach has to deal with. I mean, I think as a head coach, you're constantly putting out fires. I think that probably the thing that I enjoy the most about being a head coach is being able to, develop and cast a vision. I think that that's probably my strength, is building cultures and, holding players accountable and, getting guys to buy into the vision. And I think you do that as an assistant coach, but your job as an assistant coach is to really help further the vision of the head coach. And so it's your vision if you work for a guy that you really believe in, but it's not the same. Now as an assistant coach, You have a lot of time to really develop relationships with the players. You usually have a smaller group of guys that you're working with. And so you really get to know those guys in a different way, in a very intimate way. And I still think that those relationships are crucial, and you can still develop those relationships as a head coach, but it's a little bit different sometimes. You just have, we've got 130 guys on the team, and it's hard to get to know 130 guys. I mean, you've got to really work at it, and you've got a lot of things pulling you in a lot of different directions. And, I was telling somebody this morning, my favorite part about, the football season is you're doing football. You get up in the morning, you go in, you game plan, you go into meetings with the players, you go out on the field and you're with the players, and nobody can really bother you because they know it's football season and that's what you're focused on. But as soon as the season's over, you're recruiting, which we're recruiting year round. I mean, we're never not recruiting, right? But there's a lot of other things that sort of come into the equation, right? A lot of administrative responsibilities, a lot of meetings, and I can't say that those things are really my favorite parts of the job.
Yeah,
I love being around the players. I think that's really my passion. I love, spending time with the players. I love coaching. I love, it's one of the reasons that I've coached at this level for this long, because, you get to coach. You get to coach a position. You get to coordinate one side of the ball or the other if you choose to do that. You stay involved with the lifting program. You stay involved with the conditioning. You stay involved with the vision casting. You get to do a lot of different things. I think that when you get to the Division I level, I've watched a lot of my friends do that, and you're really more of a CEO. And I don't know that I really have as much of an interest in doing that.
Yeah, we had Jay Strath on that played at UVA, and he said George Wells. He was there 4 years in the mid-'90s. He said George Wells talked to him 3 times.
2 or 3 times, and he said
In 4 years.
he's a CEO.
Yeah.
I mean, you're pulled in a lot of directions that you don't necessarily want to be pulled into.
Yeah, it's very different at Randolph-Macon. I mean, I was in the office today, and I mean, this morning I was, signing letters to the alumni, thanking them for donations, and I had, started out with one guy sitting next to me helping me to stuff the envelopes, and then 3 more guys showed up, and after the guys got done in the weight room, I had 6 guys sitting around the table, and we were just talking. And in fact, that's who I made the comment to. It was one of the players, great kid that played at Verina, great player, great leader. And I said, this is what I love about coaching, is that I get to spend time with you guys. The other stuff I can do without that stuff, but this is what keeps me coming back. And he's like, I don't know too many places where you can just come in and have 6 guys sitting around the table with a head coach, just kind of shooting the breeze and talking about different things. And, I was focused on signing the letters, but I was, engaged with the guys, and we were talking about different things. We were talking about TV shows that they like, and, stories from their boyhood days. And it was awesome. It was a blast. I mean, it's a great way to spend the morning.
Absolutely. So recruiting for a Division III team has to be different than Division I. How do you think about recruiting when you're thinking about building a team over time?
I think it's different than Division I, but it's not. Ultimately what you're trying to do, no matter where you coach, is you're trying to find a young man that fits your program, right? And so the only difference at our level is we can't offer athletic scholarships. Our aid is still very, very competitive, and you're not just able to walk into a high school or into a living room and say, hey, we're offering you a full scholarship. But I think that other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, you're trying to find guys that are a great fit for your school. You're trying to find guys that are a great fit for your program. And that takes a tremendous amount of work. I mean, we spend as much, if not more time than the Division I guys do, because we're dealing with a lot more volume. I mean, we're bringing in a bigger class. We don't have a scholarship limit. Our roster is a little bit different than, the Division I rosters in terms of size and how we, put that roster together. I have to deal with a lot more volume in recruiting, where a guy like Bronco Mendenhall, might have to make a couple phone calls in a night. I mean, I'm hammering out call after call after call because we're just dealing with a lot more volume. And what the reality of it is that when the Division I schools come in and offer the kids that we're recruiting scholarships, the Richmonds and the William and Marys and the James Madisons, and then the Division II schools, I feel pretty good about our ability to go head to head with a lot of the Division II schools. I think that we've got a great product at Randolph-Macon. We offer a great, education, and we offer an incredible athletic experience, a great football experience. But I think that it's very competitive, and it's hard to find guys that fit the mold of what you're looking for.
Do you have a staff of people that do recruiting, or is it?
Oh,
or is it
absolutely.
mostly-
We have eight coaches on the staff, and we
Everybody.
all recruit. Yeah, everybody recruits. I mean, it's no different. It's on a smaller scale. I think probably the biggest difference for us is we don't have the support staff, right? I don't have an administrative assistant that handles my email, handles my my calls. I don't have recruiting guy that sits in a room with a team of 10 other guys like they do at Alabama,
Right.
looking at film and splicing that film up so that I can look at the 10 best plays, the 10 worst plays on a recruit. So I think it's the support staff that's probably one of the biggest differences. But I mean, it's the same. Football is football no matter where you go. High school football, college football, Division I, Division II, Division III. It's all the same in my opinion. There's just different nuances that you're dealing with at every level.
What parts of the country are you recruiting in?
So for us, about 65% of our roster comes from Virginia. So mostly from Richmond, Northern Virginia are the two biggest areas. But we'll get a few kids, probably 2 kids every year from the Lynchburg, Roanoke area, a couple kids, 2 or 3 kids from the Tidewater area, and then a few from Fredericksburg or different parts of the state. About 25% is from North Carolina, mostly the Research Triangle, right around the Raleigh-Durham area. Wilmington has become a big area for us, and Johnston County is really you can almost argue a part of the Research Triangle. It's southeast corner of Raleigh. Gotten a lot of really good players from there over the years. Get a lot of kids from Maryland. We've made it lately a little bit more of a push in central Pennsylvania. And then we'll have kids that, are kind of outliers. We have a quarterback from the state of Florida. We have a receiver from Massachusetts. His cousin played for me. So there was a connection there.
Yeah, referral
Yeah.
of sorts.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about the kind of kid you're looking for, describe that kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer, but also an easy question to answer in the sense that, I think that, we just hired 4 new coaches over the course of the last several months. Had a little bit more turnover than we normally have. And some of that, I think, was due to COVID and the uncertainty and, everything that's been going on in the country. But so, we had to kind of re-educate. Every year we reinstall our program. Our coaches are going they're on vacation here for a couple of weeks, and look, when they come back in August, we're going to reinstall the program. I mean, here's how we do everything from how we meet as a staff to how we meet with the players to how we install the offense, how we install the defense, how we deal with discipline, how we deal with recruiting, how we deal with everything, right? And we've got a coach's manual that I've put together over the years that, we'll go through pretty thoroughly, okay? But when we hired these new coaches, one of the things that I stressed is, look, obviously you got to be able to figure out whether somebody is a good enough player to play for us, okay? That's not overly complicated. I mean, there's huddle video available on the internet. You can see a film on just about anybody in the country on the internet, right? And, looking at a transcript is not very complicated. You can every transcript tells a story. What kind of a trend did this guy start out rough and get better? Has this guy challenged himself? Has he taken the toughest courses? Has he taken the course of least resistance? What kind of a guy is this in the classroom? But I think that if you were to strip the recruiting process down to 2 things for us, it really comes down to, does this kid love football? Is he passionate about football? And is he a character guy? And that's it. I mean, to me, and I think in my opinion, that's how you ought to go about hiring in any profession, in any business. Does this guy love what he does? Because if he doesn't, somebody's going to get up every morning and beat that guy every time.
Yeah, be better than him easily.
Yeah, I mean, if you roll out of bed in the morning and you're ready to roll because you love what you do and you have a passion for it, I mean, you're going to make
It'll be hard to beat.
You're going to make things happen. You're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah.
And if you're a character guy, I mean, listen, over the years we've recruited a lot of players that we thought were character guys that didn't pan out, that should have been great players for us, but they weren't, because they didn't do the right things off the field and they weren't as passionate about football as we thought they were. And that's a tough thing. Like I said, watching a kid in a camp and evaluating him, hey, this kid can play. He's clearly got the ability to do it. And evaluating whether or not he's capable as a student, those things are pretty easy. It's the character piece that you have to start stripping away some layers, and that's not always an easy thing to do.
Yeah, especially in the recruiting process. You figure it out once they show up.
I think it's hard. I think you asked me where we recruit, and I think that we have had more success recruiting local kids. And when I say local, kids within a 4-hour radius, because you get to be around them a lot more. They come on campus in the summer for a summer visit. They come back for a camp. They come back for a game day visit. They come back and spend the night with your players. And that's when you really, I think, figure out what these guys are about, is when they get around your players and they get to spend time around your players, right? Because the players know. Hey,
and they want to play with guys that are like them, right?
I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we had when I came in, is we had very few guys in the program that were really what I would call now culture keepers, right? Or standard bearers, guys that, we're all about the things that we want to be about in our program. And so it's not unusual for a kid to come in and be a perfect gentleman on a visit and, stay the night with our guys, and our guys come to me the next day and say, Coach, not a good fit. Yeah. I mean, he's just not a Randolph-Macon guy. He's not a Randolph-Macon football player. And it might be the stuff they do off the field. It might be that the guy's really not into football. It might be the way that he communicated or talked to the females that he interacted with on campus. I mean, it could be a number of things, but I think you've got to be select. I say this a lot, I don't think that we recruit as much as we select, right? And I think that, it's taken us a while to get to that point, but that's what I always remind our coaches of. We're not recruiting, we're selecting. We're trying to figure out who can come here and really make a difference, for this program, who can be a great fit for the school, because we're recruiting for the school too. And I think that's important. You got to find guys that are going to be a great fit for the college as well.
So, easy question, and I'm not going to ask it, but an easy question to be, hey, what are some of the best players you've had at Randolph-Macon? And we can ask that. We can talk about that.
Sure.
But what players, tell me names if you want, up to you, do you consider that were underdogs that turned into something? Like they barely.
This is your Rudy question.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. Like anybody stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think one guy that stands out, and it's a guy I talk about a lot, is a guy that we had a couple of years ago, Eric Hoy. But he embodies everything that we're talking about here. Eric came in, was about my height, looks a lot like I do, short, stocky
handsome man.
Guy. Very handsome, very handsome. And, Eric's high school film was really, really tough to evaluate. He was a wildcat quarterback. We knew that at 5'5", 5'6", he was not going to be a quarterback in college. Now, Eric would tell you he's taller than that, and he might be, but knew he wasn't going to be a college quarterback, right? He just, wasn't cut out to play that position. But we weren't really sure. Is he a running back? Is he a wide receiver? What's he going to play for us? But I know that when he came in on his visit, I loved him. I mean, he was just, dynamic and just had an incredible charisma. And you could tell that he was a special kid. And he came in and, we still, on the first day of camp, didn't really know what we were going to do with him. Is he going to be a running back? Is he going to be a receiver? He put him at slot receiver. And he ended up being kind of a Swiss Army knife of sorts. He played slot receiver. He was our jet sweep guy. He was a running back. He was a wildcat quarterback. I mean, he was awesome. He did a lot of different things for us. Yeah. But that's one guy that stands out. But I use him as an example because he was a kid that from a character standpoint just stood out. You know, he worked harder than anybody else, was a great teammate, wasn't an ego guy, you know, in a negative. I think everybody's got to have an ego to be good, right? But he wasn't a guy that, you know, was motivated by individual honors or individual recognition. But I've had a lot of guys like that over the years, you know. I mean, I had a quarterback in 2000, I guess Austin Faulkner played for me in 07, 08, 09, and 10. And he was a kid that, you know, once again, I told him he couldn't play quarterback when he came because I didn't think that his high school film, which was not, you know, very good, and the quality wasn't very good, and he was a wing T quarterback, and he just didn't have a lot of, you know, good film. And so I told him, I said, you can come, but you got to be a safety. Because I thought he was a good enough player to help us. I just didn't think he could do it at quarterback. But he was determined to be a quarterback, and again, was another guy that had, you know, tremendous character. And yeah, it's just what I've seen over the years.
He won you over then, I guess.
He did. I mean, you know, he was a kid that, you know, like many of these kids that I've had at Randolph-Macon over the years, just, you know, the character won out. You know,
yeah, that's awesome.
That's the common thread in all of these guys. You know, when you ask me about the guys that have overachieved, you know, it's always because of their character. Yep. When you ask me about the guys that, you know, man, couldn't that guy have been better? He could have, but there was just something that wasn't clicking. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's usually a choice. They can choose to work really hard or they can choose not to.
It's a choice. It's definitely a choice. And I think that, as I say often to these guys, there's always something. When a guy comes into my office, and there's, you know, a guy on our team that I was talking to about this the other day, when a guy comes into my office and says, I want to be really, really good. I want to be really, really good. And there's something not quite clicking. It's usually because there's something that he doesn't want to give up. Mm. You know what I mean? And that's human nature. And I think that's how we all are, isn't it? Like, you know, you want to be a great husband, but there's something you don't want to give up, right? You want to be a great dad, but there's something that, you know, you don't want to give up. You want to have a great relationship with God in your faith, but there's something that you're just, you know, not willing to give up. Yeah. It's the same thing with football, you know?
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I had a coach in college who was an awesome guy, but he was very, very overweight. And we had a guy on our team that went to medical school, and you know, came back to Wheaton to visit, and he was telling me a story. He said the coach walked into the office and said to Todd, he said, hey, he said, I need to lose weight. He said, and I'm willing to do anything. He said, just don't tell me to change my diet. And unfortunately, I mean, that's how a lot of us think and how a lot of us are wired. You know, there are things that, you know, we cling to and don't want to give up. And that's been kind of the common thread with a lot of the guys that just haven't been as good as they should have been and could have been.
Can't change your diet. Well, son, we're going to have to cut your arms off.
No,
that's
no
the only way this is going to work.
Well, crazy. Yeah, there's no workout on earth that gets you to
right.
the right weight. I mean, it's mostly about the food you select and calorie intake.
It's the human element, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's what you're battling every day, and that's what you battle when you get out of bed in the morning, and, you know, you don't feel like working at a certain level. I mean, how many guys roll out of bed like every single morning,
just ready to kill it?
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
right.
Super rare.
What's the difference between the guys that find a way to do that and find a way to get motivated, and the guys that, you know, can't do that? Yeah. You know, I mean,
are you old enough to remember the Dolphins when their perfect season?
That was 2 years before I was born.
Yeah.
I was born in '74. But I know about that team, Garo, your Premian, and
that team was amazing.
Because they still pop corks every year when the first team or the last undefeated team loses.
Yeah.
I knew about a lot of those players for sure.
Yeah. Summer camp for you guys. Describe it from your perspective, and then describe it from what you think your players are experiencing.
When we report in August, I mean, I think the one thing that it's demanding. I mean, there's no question it's demanding. I think that one of the things that we have done over the years, you adapt to the game, you adapt to the way things are. And I think that we have gone from taking an approach where I think we probably did too much with our players to, taking an approach that's a little bit more scientific and a little bit more focused on keeping guys healthy. And so, we do not have very long practices. We, a really long practice for us is a 2-hour practice. I've never believed in, having super long practices. And so I'd say that the part of it that's tough, physically it's demanding, right? But what's more challenging is you're doing football from the time that you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning until the time that you go to bed at 10 or 10:30 or 11 o'clock.
Those are long days for
They're
everybody.
long days, and you're going, you go to breakfast, you go get taped, you go to a team meeting, you go out to practice, you come in, you get in the pool, you go to lunch, you go to treatment. You might have an hour. I was just working on a preseason schedule, this afternoon, as a matter of fact, just finalizing some things. But you get an hour to maybe go and lay down in your room, then you're back in meetings. And we're reviewing the practice from that morning, okay? And before we do that, we're going over, philosophy, we're going over situations, we're going over core values. That's something that we do at the beginning of every single meeting as we talk about program vision, core values. I mean, it's something that we start out with. But so from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, they're in meetings, okay, or actually 2:30 to 4:30. Give them about a half an hour break to go get in the pool, go get some ice. We're at dinner from 5 to 6. We're right back out on the field for a walkthrough. And, then we're back in the meeting room to install for the next day, okay? Then they're spending an hour in the training room doing recovery. That's from 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 10, they're meeting with their platoons and doing team building activities. That's a day. And you're doing that day after day after day after day. It's not the physical part that's, demanding. It's the mental
And staying
part.
focused.
Staying focused.
Yeah. Wow.
And they talk about, I've heard this before from guys that are Navy SEALs, and you ask those guys, who are the guys that don't make it? It's the guys that keep thinking about the end of the process. The guys that make it are the guys that just try to get to breakfast.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense. You focus on what's in front of you at that particular moment. I remember that when I was a player. I mean, my freshman year in college, it was interesting because I'd gone from a completely different climate in Florida where it was, 90 degrees every day to playing in Chicago and only playing one way. I mean, my senior year in high school, 7 out of our 10 games, I didn't come off the field for one play. I mean, I was on every special team, every defensive snap, every offensive snap. Now I go to college and I think, man, this is a piece of cake. But the intensity is so much different at the college level. I mean, it's a totally different deal. And that's what I had to adapt to, when I went to college. And I think that's what these guys have to adapt to is you're out on the field for 2 hours. I mean, you're out on the field for an hour and a half. But when you're out on that field, I mean, you're going. And that's one of the things that we try to use to set ourselves apart, as we talk about, listen, this is the thing that we try to impress on our players, and I try to impress on our players. There isn't a coach in America that doesn't talk about character. Okay, nobody's going to bring in a group of recruits and say, hey, parents, we just don't care about character here. I mean, everybody talks about character. Everybody talks about effort. Everybody talks about working hard in the weight room. Everybody talks about, practicing, with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. And everybody talks about these things, right? But it's the execution, right, that's the challenge. It's actually living out that message, And that's the thing that I try to get our guys to understand sets our program apart. You know, like I hope that if you were to come out and watch a football practice at Randolph-Macon, like you're like, this is different. This is different. I'll tell you a story. When I was at Washington University, I don't know if you know who Jackie Joyner-Kersee is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Olympian, okay? I tell the story every year at camp because I still get goosebumps thinking about it. We're having a camp, a kids camp at Washington University, okay? High school kids. And we had like 200 kids at this camp. And the camp's going on in the middle of our football field, which is surrounded by a track. And then the other part of the camp is on a field right across. You know, you basically walk across the track, and there's another field there, okay? There isn't one kid, not one kid at that camp who has any flipping clue who Jackie Joyner-Kersee is. I'll be honest with you, at that point, I don't know that it's Jackie Joyner-Kersee, okay? But she comes out there with, I think it's her husband, Bob Kersee was her trainer, okay? And these kids are going. I mean, we're doing drills and we're doing all kinds of things. I mean, camp is hopping. I mean, it's hopping. And she warms up. All right, everybody keeps doing what they're doing. And then she starts sprinting around the track, okay? And I'll tell you what, when she started sprinting around the track, everybody just stopped. I mean, everybody. And everybody's like, holy frick. Because they know they're seeing something different than they've ever seen before, you know? And I always tell that story. I'm like, if somebody comes out here and they're watching our practice and they can't see and feel and hear a demonstrable difference between what's going on out here and what's going on at every other college football field in America, I don't care if it's Virginia, Alabama, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay, if you can't tell the difference, then we're not doing it the right way.
Is that about focus, intensity, something else?
I think it's about living the message, you know, because once again, you know, talking about character, I mean, that's easy, you know. I mean, we all have good intentions, right? Talking about character, talking about hard work, I mean, talking about all these integrity. I mean, when nothing's on the line, it's easy. You know, but let's be honest, and I tell the guys this all the time, when it comes to integrity, there's no sliding scale, right? You either have it.
Yeah, it's binary.
Or you don't.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, you know, to me it's, you know, hey, look, we've got these T-shirts and we put these slogans on these T-shirts. Like, is that just a slogan on a T-shirt or is that something that you're actually living out? Like, is that really happening in our program? Are you living that message? If you're not, then, you know, you've got a little bit of self-evaluating and self-reflecting to do. So I think that's the difference. I think it's just hard. And like I said, it's human nature because you get up in the morning and, again, that seventh day of camp, you're not jumping out of bed in the morning and saying, all right, let's go. You know, you're not doing that. You know, when you've carried the ball 30 times in a game and you've got to carry it a 31st time, you know, I mean.
130 kids. Do you
Yep.
dress 130 kids?
For home games, we do.
Okay.
If they're healthy, if they've done what we've asked them to do up to that point.
Is that unusually large for a Division III team?
Not really, because, I mean, there's some that carry more and a few that carry a little bit fewer than that. I mean, our average roster is probably about 120 to 125 guys. If you look at Virginia Tech's roster, they probably carry, you know, they have 85 scholarship players and then their walk-ons. They're not too far off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your program when you started 18 years ago versus your program now, how has it changed?
I just think it's the character of the kids in the program. Totally different. I mean, the expectations are different. I think that when I went there, the kids thought they were working hard. They thought they were going about things the right way. And now we've just got it's the culture. Totally different culture, totally different attitude, totally different mindset, the accountabilities at a totally different level. And the expectation is that, you know, we're going to win and we're going to win the right way. So it's just different. It's night and day. I can't even begin to compare the two.
What about this upcoming season has you really excited?
I mean, I think every season has me excited, to be honest with you, because I love every year is a different year. You're starting over every year. You know, so we played our our season in the spring. It was totally different. Okay. And, we went 5-0, won the conference championship. It was, beat Emory and Henry in overtime. It was awesome. And it was great to be able to play in the spring. Just kind of kept our focus away from all the other nonsense that was going on, And, when you were out there on that field, you actually felt like, man, things are normal, But, we won in overtime, big dog pile in the end zone. We took pictures, we celebrated. I gave the guys a week off because I thought they needed it mentally. I needed a mental week off. Then we came back, and first team meeting that we had a week after the championship, I said, hey, we're starting over again. Because every year you've got a whole new group of freshmen, and it's a different team, This next team is Team 134, so it's the 134th team in the history of the college. Wow. So Team 134 going to be totally different than Team 133. And I've seen that dynamic from year to year. I really have. I saw it when I was in college at Wheaton. Totally every year I can still feel the difference between the team that I played on my freshman year and the team I played on my sophomore year and the team I played on my junior year. It's like palpable. Even to this day, I can still feel what it was like to be a part of those teams. And, every year you've got to reestablish, your leadership, and you've got to develop great chemistry. You got to work at those things. You got to be intentional about those things. I mean, you have to, if you want to be good at anything, I think you have to be really intentional about it. You can't just say, well, I'm going to be a good dad. I'm going to be a good, you got to commit yourself to those things, and you got to have a plan. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing. You can't just show up and hope that you have great leadership, mm-hmm. and hope that you have great chemistry, and hope that, everything works out. If you do that, you're asking for disaster.
You have to plan, you have to live the plan, and then you have to adjust the plan as necessary.
No doubt.
You mentioned platoons earlier. How big is a platoon?
I think it varies anywhere from 8 to 12 guys. So every freshman has a mentor, upperclassman mentor. I mean, that's something that we do to help build leadership on our team and to give our guys some skin in the game. Like, hey, you've got this freshman, you're responsible for teaching him about the program, teaching him about the values of the program, and just showing him the way.
Mentors are typically sophomores or seniors?
Mentors are sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
All the above.
Yeah, all the best of the best. Best guys in our program are our mentors. And then we pick 12 platoon leaders, and they draft their platoons.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun, right?
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. And so you're a part of a platoon in the summer. You're a part of a different platoon during the fall. Okay, then you're part of a different platoon in the spring. And we do it that way to build cohesion and to build, camaraderie and to build leadership. And, if a guy's not doing a good enough job of leading his platoon, and we replace him. We find somebody else that's going to do a better job. And I think that's what, in our program, that's kind of how it works. First you aspire, to be a mentor. Then you aspire to be a platoon leader. Then you aspire to be a part of that really tight, leadership council that I meet with once a week. And then you aspire, to be a captain. And that, to me, anybody that's worth their salt is hopefully motivated to be all those things.
Right.
Is there some military in your background?
Not at all. Not at all. No, but I do have a great appreciation for the military and the way they do things and the organization and the demands that they place on their guys.
So let's take that away for a second. Appreciate you answering that. What is your relationship with Randolph-Macon basketball coach, Randolph-Macon baseball coach? Do you have a relationship? I mean, do you guys work together at all?
Yeah, we have really good relationships. And, starting with, so when I came in 2004, Mike Rhodes was the head coach, and Mike is at VCU now. Mike and I are still really, really good friends. I still call Mike, and, we still talk and, lean on each other for advice. And, he's a really, really good guy. And, yeah, it's kind of carried over with all the other coaches, but Josh Merkel's a great great friend, somebody that, I spent a lot of time talking to Josh.
Yeah.
He and I are really good friends. And, Ray Hedrick's our baseball coach. He and I came in the same year. He does a tremendous job.
That's cool.
With a baseball program. And, Carol LaHaye just retired as our women's basketball coach. She was awesome. I was, good friends with Carol. And, again, she and I would talk a lot.
Pick each other's brains.
And
that's cool.
It's a good network of coaches.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really good coaches on the staff, and good staff to be a part of.
So you said you just turned over several coaches on your staff. Well, where do you find coaches primarily?
Well, it's interesting. Before that, 6 of the 8 coaches were coaches that had played for me at Randolph-Macon. Okay. So we have kind of a mix, but normally it's either a guy that's played for us or somebody that's played for somebody that I know.
Okay.
Or somebody that's worked for somebody that I know. Because I think that's important. In the hiring process, you have to hire people that you can trust, and you have to hire people that are going to be a good fit for your program. And
you already vetted them.
You have to. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
The hiring, it's just like recruiting. It's one of the most crucial things that you do.
Oh, yeah.
The 12 platoon leaders in the draft, there's a kid who gets drafted last. He does not know that, does he?
Actually, sometimes they do. Yeah, we do that. We've had a whole group of guys in an auditorium. We obviously couldn't do that with COVID, but yeah, absolutely. Hey, pick these guys. I want guys to see where they're being ranked and where they're being picked. Listen, I did this last year when we came back for the J term. I said, here's what I want you guys to do. Okay. We're going to send out a survey monkey, okay? And you guys are going to rank the guys in your class from 1 to however many guys are in your class. 1 being the guy that you think represents the ideals of this football program more than anybody else. All the way to the bottom guy, okay? And we did that, and I thought the results were accurate. Really accurate. One of the things we talk about, it's something that I stole from, a guy named Tim Kite, and Urban Meyer does a lot of work with him, and some of their podcasts are unbelievable in terms of just the knowledge and the breadth of just experience. They're awesome. And, one of the things that Urban Meyer talks about in his book is the 10-80-10 principle. It's something that, most of us know about. In every organization, you've got the top 10%. The elite of the elite, you got those middle 80%ers. Those guys kind of form the backbone of your program. And they're good guys. Those 80%ers, they're really good. They just do not burn as hot as the guys that are the top 10%ers, okay? And then you've got the bottom 10%ers. And, interestingly enough, when you ask guys to rank each other, the bottom 10%ers are usually the same guys that we as coaches would say, yep, those are the bottom 10%ers.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for guys to see that. When we have grade point averages come out, I have a coach on my staff. I'm like, here are the grade point averages. I'm like, post them. Post the rankings. Now, we can't post their GPAs because the school would probably, listen, if they knew we did that, they'd probably have a problem with the rankings. But we do it anyways. We don't put their GPAs on there. But, hey, you're number 1. You're number 120, okay? If you don't like it, then do something about it. I asked a kid a couple of years ago, great kid from Hermitage, Jordan Rochester. He was one of the worst students on our team. His background was not great coming in. Okay, awesome kid. And he went from being one of the lowest guys to being one of the top guys in like 2 semesters. And we do it every semester, so you have an opportunity to redeem yourself every semester. And I said to him, because he had been at the bottom for, a couple semesters, maybe 3 semesters, and I'm like, what changed? Like, what happened here? And he's like, I just got tired of seeing my name at the bottom of the list.
Yeah,
motivating. And I'm like, hey,
yeah.
Some guys, they never get tired of seeing their name at the bottom of the list. They just don't care enough, And those are the guys that, when it's 4th and 1, you don't want out on the field. So you got to find out who those guys are. Who the guys are that when it's 4th and 1, you want out there, and guys that you just don't want to mess with in those situations.
Yeah, my twist on the 10-80-10 concept is there are 10% that are going to be amazing no matter how good or bad you are as a coach. There's 10% that are going to be trash no matter how good you are as a coach. And then the 80 in the middle, that's where you have great seasons or you don't have great seasons.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think that, as a coach, and I think it's part of the reason I got into coaching, you hope that those bottom 10 percenters, because I've seen it happen before. And Urban Meyer talks about it. He's like, a lot of these kids, unfortunately, they do not change. They do not change. But your hope is always that
you don't know who they are, right?
You don't know who they are. And listen, the older I get, the less tolerance I have for adults and the more tolerance I have for kids, because kids are kids. They can change.
Yeah.
And I think anybody can change. But I think that as you get older, you get a little bit more set in your ways. And I think kids have the potential to.
Sorry.
Yeah, kids always have the potential to change.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. You hope that somehow the lights come on, and that something happens to, I had a kid last year that, during the pandemic, we kept meeting over Zoom. We do a leadership series in the spring where I read a book with every class. So I read a book with a freshman class, a book with a sophomore class, a book with a junior class. And the book that we read with the freshman class is called Who You Are When No One's Looking. It's a character-based book, different character trait every week. And I had a kid that was going into a senior year last year, and during the pandemic, met once a week, and we read the same book that he had read when he was a freshman. And he's like, Coach, I didn't get this. I did not get this at all when I was a freshman. So, do you give up on that kid?
You can't.
You can't. Everybody always talks about, you gotta change the behavior. The point of discipline is to change the behavior. The point of, everything that you do is to change their behavior. And I would argue that the point is not to change their behavior, because you can change your behavior without changing your heart, right? The objective is to try to change their hearts and to win their hearts over, because once you win their hearts over and once their hearts change, then you really have lasting change, right? And that's what we're doing as educators.
The behavior's genuine then, not just
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not big. I was talking to a player in my office today, and he's like, "I'm gonna follow the rules. I'm gonna follow the rules." I'm like, dude, you're missing the point here. This isn't about rules. And I always know when I've got a guy that's not getting it, when I feel like I've just got to lay out, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Or, hey, if you do this, this is the consequence. Come on. That tells me I've recruited the wrong guy.
They're kids, but they're also young adults.
No doubt. And to me, it's about expectations. It's about a kid having the want to do right, And you got a chance. But if a guy's going to shut you off and it's going to be all about, because if it comes down to rules, what's it always going to be about? It's always going to be about how close can I get to that line without, crossing over that line. It's human nature. I mean, we all do that to a certain extent, right? Yeah. But if the focus is on the rules, that's what you're going to do. How close can I get to that line?
Yeah, you're not being sincere in your gaming system.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, 18 years. I can make some guesses about why you've been here 18 years, but why have you been here so long?
I love Virginia. I mean, that's one thing. I think this is a great state. I mean, I've never been any place where every other place that I've lived, I thought, I'm a pretty adaptable guy. I mean, I've liked everywhere that I've lived, but I've never lived at a place where I said, hey, I could be here forever. And Virginia is definitely, and I'm not saying I'm going to be here forever, but Virginia is definitely especially Ashland. I think it's an unbelievable community. I love living in Ashland. There are very few. I can't think of a day when I woken up where I said to myself, "Man, I can't believe I'm living in Ashland, Virginia." I love living in Ashland. So I think that location is a huge thing. And then the other thing that I would say is the players that we've been able to attract to play at Randolph-Macon. I'm not sure. I've always loved the kids everywhere that I've been, but it's been awesome. I just think we're able to attract incredible kids here. And I think they're the main reason that I've stayed. It's just been awesome. I love coaching these kids. They're really good kids, and they're not perfect, and not every kid that we've ever recruited has, been a great fit for the program. But overall, it's been a really good fit. I think the school's been a good fit for me. The kinds of players that we're able to attract here have been a good fit. It's been good from that standpoint.
Let's talk about your family.
Okay.
How many kids do you have?
3.
What are their ages?
So my oldest is Owen. He's 19. He plays for us at Randolph-Macon.
Oh, he plays for Dad.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Are you a little bit tougher on Owen?
He would say so. I would say that's not necessarily accurate. I've got a 19-year-old son, Owen, 17-year-old daughter, Ella, and 14-year-old son, Will.
Okay. Is Will going to play for Dad someday?
You'll have to ask him that. He said, Dad, I might consider that if Nick Saban doesn't offer me a scholarship. So I've got some stiff competition.
And you wouldn't be upset if Nick Saban offered him a scholarship.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I've been married to my wife, Kara, for 24 plus years. So this year we'll celebrate our 25th anniversary.
Congrats.
Congrats, that's awesome.
I appreciate that. So she was 20 when we got married. I was 22. So we were very young.
Nice.
I was not ready to get married when I was 22.
Heck no. Heck no. Wow.
Well, we've kind of grown up together. It's been great.
So Will's into football. What else is Will into? I'm sorry, Owen. Owen is into
Owen's
football.
into football. Will's into football. Ella plays field hockey and soccer. So they're all athletic.
That's fun, right?
It is.
What position Owen play?
Owen's a defensive end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I never pushed the kids to play football. I just told them, hey, got to do something, and you got to pick a different sport every season. You can't just focus on one thing. I like multi-sport athletes, and so they've always done a lot of different things. They played basketball, they played soccer, they played a little bit of baseball.
You mentioned wrestling growing up. What was it about wrestling that you liked?
Wrestling was something. So when I was in high school in Florida, we didn't actually have wrestling. It was just something that the headmaster at the school that I was coaching at said, hey, you need to do this. And so it was one of my other duties. I was an English teacher, football coach, assistant wrestling coach, assistant baseball coach.
Oh, got it.
So I had never wrestled.
You look like a guy who would enjoy wrestling.
I think I would have loved it, but we never had that at my high school.
Was that a Florida thing, or is that your?
Yeah, Florida wasn't a real big wrestling state. A lot of the schools down there didn't have wrestling. So I still don't think a lot of them do. I mean, I think it's a little bit bigger, but not, you're outdoors a lot. There's basketball's a big deal down there, basketball and baseball and football, and soccer was also during basketball season. So I think that took away a lot of the athletes.
So, but you're coaching at that academy, a team sport, then an individual sport, and then another team sport. Was that an adjustment for you as a coach?
Not really. I think you did probably a little bit more one-on-one stuff with the kids in wrestling, but I handled a lot of the lifting stuff, and learned a lot from the guy that was the head coach, and I was just working with kids. I was an English teacher too, so.
Was camaraderie the same on a wrestling team?
No, definitely not. It wasn't the same. It was a different sport. I think unless you've grown up with that and that's your sport, and you totally get it's a totally different culture. Wrestling has its own different culture, and it's very different than anything that I've ever. Those guys are a different breed. I have a ton of respect for, what they do. Grew up listening and learning from Dan Gable, the longtime coach at Iowa, and I always admired those guys and think those guys do a tremendous job. But that was just something that I did in the off season to help out the wrestling coach.
Gotcha. What do you do for fun?
I like to read a lot. Reading's kind of a passion of mine. So I think really the two passions that I have outside of football are, three passions really: my family, my faith, and then reading. I love to read.
What are you reading now?
I've got a lot of different things going on right now. I'm finishing up Kevin Eastman's book. I don't know if you guys know Kevin.
He's
Eastman.
been on the podcast.
Has he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was on a different Zoom meeting that I was a part of and listened to him, so I was a little bit intrigued by him and had heard a lot of things about him. He was at Randolph-Macon for 1 year as the AD.
That's right. Yep.
That was before I came. So I'm finishing up his book. I'm reading a book called The Power of Story by a guy named Jim Lair. Awesome book, all about how we, shape our stories and the choices that we make and, the narratives that we frame, and it's fantastic. So those are the two that I'm finishing up right now. I've been reading. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago at the beach, and I read two of Pat Lencioni's books. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. Business guy, leadership guy, fantastic writer. I love his stuff. He's one of my favorite writers. And I reread one of the books that I've read from him before, and read another one of his books. And there's another book that I was really found fascinating. I've read it for the second time. It was a book that our basketball coach actually recommended to me, The Messiah Method. Messiah is a Christian school up in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and they are a powerhouse in Division III soccer. They've won a ton of national championships there, both on the men's side and on the women's side. And I just fascinated by the culture they've been able to develop, very similar to the things that, I think all these cultures that you hear of that are great cultures have a lot of things in common.
Favorite book?
Wow. So I'll give you two. In terms of fiction, I was an English major, and so my favorite book of all time is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. My favorite business/leadership type book, probably the most impactful book that I've read, Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah, it's I think Circuit City was in that book. That's the only bummer from that book.
Great book.
Yeah,
tremendous book.
A lot of great lessons. A lot of great lessons in that.
I went up to I think it was in spring of 2005. The Wharton School of Business of the University of Pennsylvania had a leadership conference that I went to, and he was the keynote speaker. He spoke for 3 hours and was far and away the most engaging speaker I've ever listened to. Just unbelievable. 3 hours that just, boom, flew by.
He's a great writer, too.
Great writer, great speaker. I mean, there are very few. I mean, when you hear some of these guys, I mean, interestingly enough, not to get off on a tangent, but at a coaching convention many years ago, I don't even remember the year. It must have been in the early 2000s. I listened to Tom Osborne speak, and I don't know if you've ever heard him speak. Very, very soft-spoken, very, very monotone. I'd say some people would even classify him as boring. By far one of the most engaging guys I've ever listened to. Just fantastic.
Even being monotone.
Was unbelievable. Kept me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Thought he was awesome. I mean, I can rattle off in my brain just guys that I've listened to over the years that have been just really impactful. R.C. Slocum was another guy, Texas A&M head coach. Listened to him. Listened to him speak at a clinic down at the coaches convention. One of the best quotes ever: "Conviction-driven leadership is based on a vision of perfection." Loved it. I mean, just still remember that. I never forgot that.
Stuck with you.
Yeah. Conviction-driven leadership is based on a vision of perfection. Just having a standard, having a vision, and trying to hold people to that. So I thought he was awesome. Great football coach.
Have you thought about writing a book?
My wife says that I should sometime, but I think it'd mostly be plagiarized because I've read so many things and stolen so many things.
Wait a minute, was that my idea?
So many different guys. Yeah, but I love to read. That's kind of my passion. I love to read. I love to think, and I think that's really important. I think it's one of the things I probably need to do a better job of, is just to set more time aside, to read and to think, and I always notice a difference when I do that.
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable talking about your journey to faith? Because faith is obviously very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that, I told you a little bit about, my dad, took his life when I was 7 years old. We moved to Miami, and I would say that after that happened, things really started to unravel in our family. I mean, my mom had a really, really tough time with it, and really struggled with alcohol, really struggled with drugs for, I would say, the majority of her life. I mean, great lady, taught me a lot of really, really good lessons, but passed away when she was 53, and just had a tough life. I mean, just what was really a tough deal with her. And so we lived in Miami, and like a lot of kids, I was a little bit lost. I mean, not just a little bit lost, but a lot lost, and probably was not headed down the right path. Was starting to make some really bad choices. I would say that I was not a great kid. I mean, I played sports. I made really good grades, so I think I got away with a lot just because I kind of put on that facade, and the teachers thought I was charming and made good grades, but I was really headed in the wrong direction in a lot of different ways. And 7th grade, I got involved with football. I think that had a very, very positive impact. I don't know, and I know for a fact that would not have been enough to really change the course of my life. But in the 8th grade, we were having a lot of, or right before my 8th grade year, we were having a lot of issues at home. And my mom was, she had a boyfriend that, lived with us, and they were having a lot of problems. And we moved to the Loxahatchee. And the closest public school was 45 minutes away. Twin Lakes High School. It was, Loxahatchee was in the middle of the country. And so my mom said, hey, we're going to look at a couple of these, schools that are a little bit closer. One of them happened to be a private school, the King's Academy. It's 20 minutes away. And so I went there in the 8th grade, and that school just had an unbelievable impact. I mean, I'm so, I still talk to my high school football coach. Just talked to him yesterday, as a matter of fact, him and his wife both. But I am eternally grateful for just the impact that school and those teachers. And listen, I went in there kicking and screaming. I did not, want to have anything to do with Christianity, didn't want anything to do with Christ. I was just very, very resistant to the message there when I went to school there. And I literally went, I came home and told my mom one day, I said, it's interesting how football, wove its way into this, because I went home and told my mom one day, I don't want to go to this school anymore. I cannot handle it here. I don't like the message. I don't like the kids. Don't like what this place is about. And there's only one thing that kept me there. Football. I wanted to play football. And the other option, my mom said, you can go to this other school, but that other school didn't have football. And the only thing that kept me there was I just really, really wanted to play. Wow. And so that's where it started. And I went to Wheaton College. That's where I played. And that was a Christian school. And that was a whole thing in itself. My freshman year in high school, I started on the varsity team. So running back and a free safety. And I thought that, I'm like, listen, if I can start on the varsity team as a freshman, I'm going to be able to go wherever I want. I had no clue. I was completely clueless. And so everybody asked me, where are you going to school? And I said, I'm going to Penn State to play for Joe Paterno. And so somebody said, well, listen, you got to have a backup plan. And I'm like, I do have a backup plan. Well, what's your backup plan? If that doesn't work out, I'm going to Notre Dame to play for Lou Holtz. So I had it all figured out. And, South Florida, as you know, is, jam-packed with athletes, and there were a ton of good ones down there. And I think I was self-aware enough that by my junior year I said, I don't think Penn State's going to work out, and I don't think that, Miami, Florida State are going to be calling anytime soon. So I made good grades. I was the salutatorian in my high school class, so I started to think, okay, what's going to be the best track here? And I remembered back to what my 7th grade football coach said. He said, you can go play at an Ivy League school. So I thought, why not do that? So I got recruited by Harvard and Dartmouth and all the Patriot League schools and, Princeton and all those places. And so I decided you were allowed to take 5 paid visits. And some kids really enjoyed that process. I did not. I said, I'm going to pick 4 and leave it at that, because middle of baseball season, we started baseball a lot earlier, and the recruiting process was a little bit different back then. And so I went to Columbia, Ivy League school, on a visit. Said, no way I'm going to school in the middle of New York City. It was just like a culture shock for me. Went to Lehigh in Pennsylvania and visited up there. I liked that, but there was just something that didn't feel right. And then I went to Holy Cross. And when I left Holy Cross, I was convinced that that's where I was going to spend the next 4 years of my life. It was 1AA football. I wanted to always play Division I football. The guy that they had hired to replace the guy that had been recruiting me, so Mark Duffner was the head coach there, had tremendous success, won 60 games in a span of 6 years, averaging 10 wins a year, got hired to be the head coach at the University of Maryland. And so he left in the middle of the recruiting process, and a guy by the name of Peter Voss, who had been the head coach at, the head coach at Allegheny at one point, but had been the quarterback's coach at Notre Dame. He got hired to be the head football coach. And, when I left there, I still remember walking to his office on a Sunday morning. It was snowing outside. It was freezing cold. And I remember sitting in his office and him saying, hey, are you ready to commit? He really tried to push the envelope and get me to commit. And I said, look, I'm almost 100% sure that I'm coming here, but the guys at Wheaton, and the only reason I was even planning a visit to Wheaton was because my best friend from high school, Dean Dumais, went to school there the year before I did and was having an awesome experience. And so I got to know those coaches better than any of the other coaches. I established a rapport with them. Loved Coach Swider. Coach Swider could sell ice to an Eskimo, and he and I just had an incredible connection. It's still super close to this day. Well, I said to Coach Voss, these guys have already bought my ticket. I don't think I'm going to go there, but I have to go there with an open mind, or that wouldn't, be right. And I really believe that, your yes should be yes and your no should be no, and that you should honor your word. So I went to Wheaton the next weekend, and I just knew that's where I needed to be. And I knew the only thing that was keeping me from going to Wheaton was my ego a little bit, because now, as I say to a lot of kids now when they come in for visits, the pressure right now is immense on social media. I didn't have that pressure, right? We didn't have social media. But I would go to the lunch table every day, and the guys were, where are you looking? Who's recruiting you? Who's interested? And I had good options, really good options. The guys at UCF at that point, Central Florida, was 1AA, and they recruited me really, really hard. And they wanted me to walk on, but they said, hey, look, we're not scholarshiping a running back this year, but we feel like you can come in here. All the same stuff that you hear from a lot of these schools. But I had good options. I could have walked on at a lot of really good Division I schools. I had these Ivy League and Patriot League options, but I just knew that Wheaton, was going to be the best fit. And the fact that it was a Christian school was certainly a factor in my decision. I after growing up in the kind of house that I grew up in, I just did not want to be around, that party scene for the next 4 years of college. Just didn't want to have any part in it.
When did you know you were a Christian?
Oh, I think for sure in the 8th grade. I think that's when things clicked.
Lucky you had certain folks in your life.
There's no question about it. There's no question about it. It's amazing when you look back. And I'd like to think that these things happened the way that I remember them happening. But yeah, there's so many different moments in my life where I remember, this coach said this to me, or this teacher said this to me, and it's amazing how. One thing that's interesting too is, like, I'll tell you one thing. This guy in the 7th grade, Coach LeMay, that guy, he was no joke. I mean, he was probably the toughest guy. I mean, he was a construction worker. He loved football. He played quarterback, was a left-handed quarterback at a junior college. I mean, he was a lunch pail guy, blue-collar guy, cussed like a sailor. I mean, came in every day with a metal, lunch pail that he put his lunch in every day, and he sat on that lunch pail and, called roll. And, I mean, he was a rough dude, but it was just incredible the way that God used that guy, who I don't know if that guy was a Christian. I mean, certainly based on the way he talked, I'm not sure.
Maybe not, yeah.
But, I mean, God used that guy. I mean, and I still remember things that he said to me, and I still remember that, I mean, he just instilled an incredible passion and just an incredible level of discipline and tough. And yeah, I'll tell you the one thing that I always remember, I mean, this guy, he was so hard, but he knew how to encourage you. You know what I mean? Like he just knew what to say to you and how to say it to you. And, he could tear you down, but man, that guy could just build you up like nobody else.
He was there to have a positive impact.
He was there to have a great impact, and he had a great impact. And I think that he was a guy that God, specifically put, in my life, and especially at that time, at a time when I like I said, I was lost. I mean, I was just not in a good place. I mean, I was in as bad a place as you can be, and headed to a worse place.
What's Coach LeMay's first name?
Al.
We're going to try to track him down with our crack research
We
staff.
got to figure that. I've looked before, and I don't know where he's living. He's, I don't know if he's still in Florida. Still don't know. I don't know if he's alive, but the guy was unbelievable. I mean, he had an enormous impact.
Now you get to be the one making the impact.
Yeah, I mean, if I can make half the impact that some of these guys made on my life, they're just. I've just been very, very fortunate to, have some unbelievable. It's sad. I was talking to Coach Bishop. I told you was my head coach at Wheaton. He's not doing well. He's in hospice care right now, and I talked to him the other day. He's not doing well. He's struggling with dementia. And I mean, man, the thing I miss the most about him is just for the last several years, he hasn't been in a good place mentally. And I used to be able to call him about anything. And I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm having this issue with my kids or my wife or my job, or, he was just a guy that I could call about anything. Coach Swider's like that. I still talk to Coach Swider. I mean, I went back to Chicago over Thanksgiving break, and I spent 4 hours, in Coach Swider's house just shooting the breeze the day before, Thanksgiving. But I've been very, very fortunate, very fortunate. I mean, God's put some amazing people in my life, and, my wife's been unbelievable. I just got very, very lucky, when I found her, and, I've just been very blessed in so many different ways.
Are your kids going to listen to this?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Let's say someday they listen to it.
Someday.
What's the one life lesson you want to pass on?
I've thought about this a lot. I think that, when you're young, there's a lot of stuff that you're chasing, okay? And it's one of my favorite book in probably both the New Testament and the Old Testament is the book of Ecclesiastes, okay? And I'm not sure that they know exactly who wrote it, but a lot of people think it was Solomon, right? One of the wisest guys and wisest men that ever lived, and it was a guy that had everything. I mean, had everything that he could have, that a man could have at his disposal. All the riches in the world, great places to live, hundreds of wives. I mean, everything. I mean, and he says in the book of Ecclesiastes, at the conclusion of his life, he's like, I denied myself nothing, right? Like anything that I could have chased in this world, none of those things did I deny myself. And he says, and the conclusion is that it's all meaningless, But there's a verse, I think in chapter 12, where he says, so what's the conclusion of the matter? And he says, the conclusion of the matter is love God and keep his commandments, for that is the whole duty of man. So I think if I had a piece of advice for my kids, it would be that. I think that, life, all the stuff that you're chasing, all the trophies, all the championships, all the things that we think just matter so much, just none of those things mean anything if you don't have a relationship with God, if you don't have a relationship with Christ. I think that's what ultimately gives life meaning. And there's no better way to say it than the way that the author of Ecclesiastes frames it, right? Love God and keep his commandments, for that's the whole, duty of man. So that's how I would sum it up. It's hard. Life is hard, and every time you do something that you think is, man, this is it. This is what I've lived my whole life for. You figure out it's just still something missing. And I tell my kids all the time, the only thing that can ever fill those gaps is a relationship with Christ, a relationship with God.
It's a good place to end it, Pedro.
Appreciate it.
You want to ask? How do you transition to your question?
You don't after that, by the way.
All right, go ahead.
Maybe we should take a moment of silence, because that was awesome. So usually our last question is, you're Jimmy Fallon tonight. Jimmy Fallon's sick. You're taking over. You can have a male guest, a female guest, and a music group. And we've also added in comedian if you want to do that. But
Wow.
Male guest, female guest, music group.
They can be alive or dead.
Alive or dead. You go for whoever you want. Whether you want ratings, you want your show, whatever it is.
You may know them personally. You may not know them personally.
Yep.
Wow, that is a tough question.
Got to limit yourself to 3 answers here.
3 guests.
Yeah.
3 guests.
That's really tough. I mean, I would say that, if we're talking about guys that are in the coaching profession, I love Bill Belichick. I think that guy is intriguing.
Yeah.
And very successful.
I think Nick Saban's, I know you told me one guy.
You got to pick one, Pedro.
Those guys are cut out of the same mold. But, I don't know. Maybe a guy like Bill Belichick. I mean, it's hard to pin me down on this because, I mentioned Jim Collins. I'll tell you what, I might even pick Jim Collins. So you're going to have a hard time, pinning me down on this. And, as far as a female, boy, I'm trying to think.
You can say your wife is a safe answer if you want.
Oh, just to interview. I mean, I there's no other, woman I'd rather be around for sure. But yeah, let's say my wife. But musician, I've always loved James Taylor.
Wow, that's a good one.
I like James Taylor a lot.
It's a great pick.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just have a lot of different interests. So it's hard to really pin it down to a couple people.
Yeah, not that I'm answering for you, but Jim Collins sounds like a great answer because he's meant a lot to you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the thing about Belichick that's intriguing is just the way that he's able to, just kind of implement a college culture, right, at that professional level. That's tough to do.
Guys are making that much money.
It's
buying
tough.
in.
It's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough to get guys to buy in when they're making that kind of money.
But he makes it happen every time.
He makes it happen.
And he keeps guys like Slater around for forever because he's the culture guy that Belichick loves.
Interesting because I think he caught a lot of flack this year for, not being as good. I thought he probably had one of his better years in coaching. I thought that what they were able to do, the way they were able to stay in games, thought he did a pretty darn good job.
You made me think of him earlier when you were talking about the first player that you couldn't figure out a position for. You made me think of Julian Edelman, who is somebody that Belichick brings in. It's like, he's got this talent, but not going to be our quarterback. Where do we put him?
Yeah.
And he turned him into a potential Hall of Famer. Fantastic.
Yeah, Belichick's a guy, Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. I mean, those guys are just I don't know if you guys saw the HBO special where those guys went back and forth.
Yeah.
very, very intriguing. Just love the way they think about the game and the way they think about, players. And,
Yep.
it's fascinating.
They figured it out. There's no question.
They have.
Yeah.
They have.
Very cool. Pedro, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate
you having
I should mention our connection is through Rob Dull. Rob is sitting here. We started calling him Silent Rob because he takes notes. But
That's awesome.
great having you here, Pedro.
Yep,
Great hearing
thanks for
your
having
story.
me. Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.